Hello, hello, I'm Mike, this is Ben, and Charisma was my dump stat. Welcome to Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies. Ben and I are what you would call fans of Dungeons & Dragons. My god, are we fans of D&D.
We've played quite a bit of D&D in our time, a dabbling of 2nd edition, lots of 3.5, and a bit of Pathfinder on the side, if that counts. But 5e is by far our poison of choice. In fact, we'd go so far as to say it's our favorite RPG system of all time. And we intend to explain why.
Okay, so sit back, relax, and enjoy these reasons why you should give 5th edition a chance if you haven't already.
Theater of the Mind.
One of the key features in 5th edition is the poetically named Theater of the Mind. We're talking about the idea that the entire game can be played without battle maps or miniatures, that the whole game can be played with just character sheets, some dice, and your imagination.
Of course, the option to play with all your battle maps and minis is still there. We do it, but it's not strictly necessary to enjoy the gaming experience. It makes the whole game easier to pick up and play, to the point that new players can try it out basically for free, what with the SRD and all that. But that being said, we'd still recommend the $20 D&D starter set. It's a pretty good purchase for anyone who doesn't want to shell out for the core books.
Right, it's even got its own set of dice, it's a really nice little kit.
And an adventure.
Yeah. Okay, so because of this emphasis on the theater of the mind, 5th edition places role-playing front and center. It even puts your personality traits on the front of the character sheet, so you never forget what your character is all about.
Right, but you know, there's a lot of other games that are focused on role-playing above all else, like Fate, GURPS, the Apocalypse system.
Right.
But 5th edition is awesome because it combines the theater of the mind approach with interesting mechanics.
Yeah, I agree.
You're not just spinning your wheels without direction in D&D. It's got everything you need to craft an adventure and tell it around the table, without any of the complicated stuff. Let's talk about the DNA of D&D.
So, remarkably, 5th edition might just be the most D&D role-playing game made yet. And I know that sentence doesn't make any sense, so allow us to try to explain.
For all intents and purposes, Dungeons & Dragons is the first role-playing game. It's the progenitor of everything from Skyrim to Starfinder. Even if something doesn't explicitly spell out D&D as an influence, you can tell when it's there.
And 5th edition stays true to that legacy even when other games have kind of veered away. Like, it's easy to make an argument that there should be fewer than 6 ability scores, which are the things that define what your character is good at. And lots of other games have simplified that down, reducing it to 3 or 4, and they've gotten simpler systems out of it. But D&D stays true to that kind of core design principle as a reference point for veteran fans, but also makes attempts to make it as accessible and approachable as possible for new players.
Plus, there's no substitute for D&D classics like Mind Flayers, Beholders, and a Serac.
Yeah.
You just can't do those anywhere else, if only because Wizards of the Coast will hunt you down with their ninja lawyers.
Yeah.
Customizability.
Once you get the hang of the rules, 5th edition is super easy to expand upon with your own custom material. Everything about it, from classes, weapons, to monster stats, is modular in a way that allows you to tinker with it.
And when you're writing an adventure, you're going to want to do just that. A unique magic item or monster can tie a whole story together, so this is a godsend to storytellers.
For instance, you could set your game in interstellar space, adding things like blasters and starships, without changing anything about the core rules. We're actually doing just that with our Dark Matter campaign setting, which we're building over on our Patreon.
Oh yeah, really check that out. It's a passion project, but it's so much fun.
It's so good.
And, you know, that's because the components of the system have enough specificity to make them feel different, but enough simplicity to make everything easily understandable. There's a lot of design that goes into that, but you basically never really have to look deeply into it. Implicit balance.
In many RPG systems, including previous editions of Dungeons & Dragons, it was possible for a new player to buy the books, build a character, and then be functionally worthless. You basically had to have an understanding of all of the game's options and the kind of balance around which they're built in order to even get started, and that's a super unfun learning curve for anyone trying it.
But that's not so in 5th edition. It's basically impossible for a new player to devise a character that can't stand shoulder to shoulder with everyone else at the table. Barring shenanigans from the Dungeon Master, you should have a smooth ride with this game.
This is also something we can say for much more rules-light games, but 5th edition manages to have a suite of balanced options that are both fun to play and different to play from one another.
Accessibility.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This video is about why you, someone who presumably hasn't played D&D before, should dive into 5th edition. And the biggest reason to do that is that 5th edition is the most accessible, most approachable RPG on the market, bar none.
We've pulled out a character sheet for someone who's never played an RPG before in their lives, and they've picked up the system in minutes. We understood the whole system after skimming the player's handbook a couple times.
Yeah, so unlike a number of game systems I can think of, 5e has very simple, easy to understand rules that don't rely on esoteric keywords, complicated math, other nonsense. It uses pretty plain English to get its mechanics across so you can focus on the more magical elements like elves, dwarves, and the like, and also so you can focus on the storytelling, which is really what it's all about.
So why should you try it out? Because it's easy to try out, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I can't spell out why D&D is magic in a bottle, and I can't tell you the adventures you're going to go on once you get started. I can just tell you that you should. Now, let's go on to the Mailbag of Holding.
Mailbag. Hi, welcome to the Mailbag of Holding. We're going to be answering some of your comments from last video, which was about the worst magic items in D&D, the ones that can like ruin your character, specifically in 5th edition D&D, since we've been talking about that. Yeah, we're gonna talk about some of those. Miles says he once gave his party a tankard of alcohol, and it turned out fine. That's surprising. Normally this ends up pretty badly in ours, where everyone gets drunk and then the campaign goes on like a drunken bacchanal adventure, which is, like, that's happened before. It's never too bad. No one ever dies, so that's great. Chris Wenzel mentions that we didn't include the Book of Vile Darkness, which is kind of an omission on our part, but we did that intentionally so we didn't laden the book down with too many artifacts. The Book of Vile Darkness is like the Hand in the Eye of Vecna. It's super, super evil. You get a lot of negative traits from it, and it can, it's really mean. Like, it's not a fun thing to have. That one I thought was less fun because it doesn't like promise you power so much as like it's just a thing you give to the villain of the campaign. So yeah, I thought the Hand of Vecna was a much better inclusion. I'm gonna butcher his name, but Bryce Camo mentioned that he once had a rogue try to put a portable hole into a bag of holding, which is maybe my most favorite rules interaction in all of D&D. If you put an extra-dimensional space in extra-dimensional space, it rips a hole in space-time and throws you onto the astral plane. Frankly, we should have included that in our list somewhere, if it was a lot longer, because it can ruin entire campaigns. It spits you out on the astral plane, which is like the super barren, like almost impossible to get home from thing. So if you're like a low-level party that gets a bag of holding and something else, and you cause that to happen, your characters are basically gone. You're not getting them back. This is now a new campaign completely. Tyron2 questions our usage of the Eye of Vecna on our list, because it's an artifact and not a traditional magic item, and artifacts should be used much more purposefully in a campaign. They shouldn't be given out willy-nilly. You should build campaigns around them. Now, a couple people mentioned this, and I kind of agree with that point to some extent. Artifacts, because of their legendary status, their uniqueness, can have positives and negatives built in. But the Eye of Vecna sticks out to me as being particularly egregious because it gives you a lot of benefits, like a lot of stuff that you want, but then it can just outright kill you for using it. And that's mean. Like, kills you, destroys your soul, the whole shebang. And I get that that's part of its shtick, but it's not like a gradual progression where it corrupts you and it corrupts you and it corrupts you, and then one day you just took it too far. It's bang, you're dead. You rolled the wrong number after expending its last charge. That's really the reason that one made the list, and a lot of other items didn't. It can just fundamentally end a character right away. Leslie Laserstorm, thank you for having that name. It just really brightens my day, mentioned that she gave her players an Ifriti bottle and a cubic gate, and because they've been responsible, haven't broken the campaign yet, which I think is, exactly the point, right? These like any magic item, if used responsibly, is going to be completely fine. These magic items just have a lot more potential to be used irresponsibly and to completely ruin campaigns as a result, which is why they made the list. Mega Ralph 12345 asks an interesting question. Can you build an entire campaign around a deck of many things? And I think the answer to this is every campaign that has a deck of many things suddenly becomes a campaign built around a deck of many things. And I think that's the problem with the magic item. Its negatives are not so negative that they're like outright killing you some of the time, but it's that when you start drawing from it, any campaign that used to be there is gone, and now it's all about the deck of many things because they're so intrusive and so big. And I know that's, it's because it's a legendary item and it has big, powerful effects, but it kind of turns every campaign into a deck of many things campaign, and that can be good or bad, but I think for most stories, it's bad. David Wellman mentions that the Bag of Devouring should have been on our list because it can just straight up pull a character inside and then completely devour them, destroying them instantly. Yes, it should have. We screwed up. It should have been on the list. For some reason, I thought the Bag of Devouring, from memory, only damaged you and then could maybe take off an arm. I forgot that it could pull you inside completely. That being said, it's not super lethal. There's a lot of ways to get out of it. One of which is puncturing the bag just before someone would otherwise be devoured, which ejects them on the astral plane, just like if you stuck a portable hole in a bag of holding, which isn't awesome. In fact, it's kind of crap, but it's better than instant death. So, I don't know. It should have made the list. My bad. Okay, that's all we've got for this episode of the Mailbag of Holding. If you'd like to be featured in this segment, leave a comment below talking about your experiences with D&D, why you did or did not get into Dungeons & Dragons, and your experiences with 5th edition specifically. Especially, we want to hear from people who haven't played before or have just recently gotten into it, because I think that's kind of some of the most interesting experiences we can talk about. So yeah, back to the... Thanks for watching!
If you like D&D and wish there was more stuff out there for 5th edition, consider checking out our blog, Middle Finger of Vecna, or our Patreon, where you can support this show and get tons of cool stuff for 5th edition.
Oh, I also just cast the spell Bless, so you can add 1d4 to checks you make to like, comment, or subscribe for the next minute. Be sure to do that. Okay, now we're in the outro. I really want to talk about advantage and disadvantage. It's a really good kind of example about why this 5th edition works so well for so many circumstances. So with advantage, you roll 2d20s instead of 1 and take the better one, and you just do that whenever circumstance would mean that you're probably going to succeed, right? And disadvantage is roll 2d20s, take the lesser one when, you're asking the DM to do something that's completely bonkers, right? These are like really good examples of like simple, easy to understand rules. They're easy to play with and they're fun to play with, but they also let you tell just more dynamic stories because you have a generic thing you can do in almost any circumstance that helps kind of elaborate on that. And yeah, that's just one example of just tons of things in 5th edition that makes it super, super fun to play, and it's the reason we fall in love with it.
Really streamlined, too.
Yeah, streamlined, I think, is the right word here.
All right, you guys have a good one.